Hello friends, welcome back. I'm Beth, here to help you fulfill your potential in meditation. As most of you know, I don't have just one method that I teach to everybody, like one size fits all. Instead, I much prefer to teach people one-on-one, and the reason is that you're all different. So please use these videos as a guideline, and if there's anything that's not quite working for you, anything doesn't quite fit, then be in touch and I'll be more than happy to discuss those things with you one-on-one. Today's video is about mindfulness of death, this really important foundational technique that we should all have in our meditation toolkits. The Buddha said that we can practice mindfulness of death either as a protective meditation, which means that we use it to support our main meditation and bring us back into balance, or we can use it as a meditation technique in its own right, something that we're practicing every day. Mindfulness of death, it's a great technique if maybe we've lost our sense of urgency in the practice, or if we find ourselves wasting time or spending time on the wrong things. It can be a great practice to re-establish a clear sense of priorities, to reinvigorate some urgency in the practice. So if we want to practice mindfulness of death, where do we start? Well, the first thing that we need is the perception of either a dead being or a dying being. The object of mindfulness of death is always a dead being or a dying being or a group of dead or dying beings. And when we start out, I usually suggest that we start with what I would call an easy being. So this is a being who maybe not a family member, not somebody who we have a lot of emotional feeling or attachment to, not somebody where we feel distraught at the thought of their death. Also not somebody who we hate, because when somebody who we hate dies, there's a different set of emotions that can accompany that. For most of us, an easy being will be a being who we like and respect, and is already dead. So a dead being tends to be easier for people to start with. And the reason is that when the being is already dead, oftentimes a lot of the work of accepting their death has already happened just through the passing of time. So when we've thought of our easy being, then we need a perception of that being in their dead or dying nature. So some of us might be able to visualize that being dead, and then we can use that mental image as our meditation object. For others of us, that act of visualization might be more difficult. In that case, we can use a memory, we can use a picture, we can use their name, we can use any perception that reminds us of their dead or dying nature. Once we've got this object of the perception of the dead or dying being, then we want to find some words that remind us of their dead or dying nature. So it could be simply the word death in whatever language you want, or it could be a few words that remind us of the frailty of life, the brevity of life, how we could die at any moment, how when we die everything that we've accumulated through the lifetime is lost. Any words that really invigorate in you this sense of their dead and dying nature. So once we have our perception of the dead and dying being, and we also have our words, then we can start our meditation in the normal way by closing our eyes, relaxing our bodies, relaxing our minds, and then bringing our attention to our easy being, our dead or dying easy being, with our words associated with death, sustaining our attention on the dead or dying nature of that being, using our words to remind us. As we do that, we might notice that our minds become calm and our minds start to concentrate and establish themselves on this dead or dying nature of this being. When we start to feel like our meditation has some momentum behind it, our minds are starting to settle down, then we can try switching our awareness to ourselves, to our own dead or dying nature in the same way. So we want a perception of our own dead or dying selves. A lot of people choose to use an image or an imagination of our own dead bodies. You can use any perception that you like. And then again, some words that remind us of our dead or dying nature. I too will die. How I die is uncertain. Tomorrow I could be dead. Any words that really hook you in to this sense of being dying, that right now we're dying. And so we sustain our attention on our own dying nature. As we do so, if our minds become unstable, then we can go back to our easy being for a few minutes, then back to ourselves, back to our easy being, back to ourselves, and so on until we find it easy also to practice mindfulness of death on ourselves. When mindfulness of death on ourselves is well established, then we can start adding other beings one by one, starting with the easier ones and working towards the more difficult ones. In general, the more difficult beings to practice mindfulness of death on will be the ones that we have more attachment to, the ones who are closer to us, the ones who we really don't want to lose. When we've practiced with a wide range of beings, then we can start expanding our awareness of death out in what the Buddha called all 10 directions, which is basically all the directions. So to the two sides, to the front and back, to the four corners, up and down. So we could make some determination, for example, all of the beings in all 10 directions within a 100-meter radius. And we can imagine all of those beings and reflect on their dead and dying nature. When we feel confident, when our mind becomes stable, then we can expand our awareness a little further in all 10 directions, all beings within a 200-meter radius. And we can reflect on their dead and dying nature. And in this way we can expand our awareness step by step until we include all of the beings to infinity in all 10 directions are either dead or dying. As we practice mindfulness of death, we really want to emphasize quality over quantity. So we need to make sure that the words we're using, the perceptions of death that we're using feel true, feel sincere, feel resonant. We don't want the practice to become mechanical, formulaic, robotic, dry. It's really important that we feel truly connected to the essence of death and dying. So those are all of the instructions that I have today for mindfulness of death. What I would suggest is that you get off of your screens and onto the cushions and give it a go. Hopefully, as we reflect on mindfulness of death and our priorities become straight, we will want to spend less time in front of the screens and more time on the meditation cushion. And as you practice, if you encounter any difficulty, if anything isn't quite working for you, then be in touch, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to discuss those things with you. As most of you know, I do all of my work on a donation basis, so I encourage you to support me either through Patreon or through my website. You can find the details about how to do that just underneath this video. Thank you so much for your support. Wishing you the best with your meditation.